Jack. So I got a few things to throw at you right now. And before we get into all these numbers about baseball itself, is right here. Okay. The regular season in attendance is up for Major League Baseball. 9.6% from last year. Baseball popularity has risen. It's gone very well. There are new stars, new players, new pitchers. Like there's a whole new generation of youth and exciting ball players. And you would have to believe the bump it got from other teams like the Baltimore Orioles and their fan base. Like other cities had teams that were engaged in down the stretch, right? That had a long shot, but even were still possibilities in wild card. This kept fans involved, and that's why they added the extra playoff team and all that to keep that. And the ratings are up. So during the summer, fans were going to the stadium more than ever before, right? And definitely a lot more, basically 10%. 9.6. Let's round it off. From a year ago. So when you think baseball is boring and you believe all this other nonsense, well, for some reason, people are still showing up to the ballparks. Okay. Maybe not what they did in Tampa Bay when about, 9,000 people showed up for a playoff game. No, I think it was like 19,000 fans showing up to a playoff game. That's really embarrassing for the Tampa Bay Rays themselves. But there it is, folks. Baseball in postseason, if they have a good postseason, it's just going to help its popularity more and get back to some of the good stuff that we loved about baseball. All right, a little more graphics here for you. These are your recent World Series teams itself, or their last time they won a title. Okay, so a couple of teams were knocked off. At the top of the list, you can see it right now. You got the Astros who did it last year. You got the Braves who did it 2 years ago, and the Dodgers who did it 3 years ago. And then the Phillies are there from 2008. I was at that World Series. I went to Game 1 and Game 2 in Tampa with that series itself. And then the Diamondbacks, 2001, 22 years later. They're still looking for their next title. And then the Minnesota Twins. It's been a long time, 1991. And at the bottom of the screen there, you have the Baltimore Orioles, 1983. I remember that. They beat the Phillies with Cal Ripken. And then the Texas Rangers, who have never won. So on this list, only one team, Texas, has never won a World Series, and they got a shot. They got a good team. They had a great year. And they're built for postseason. Now, I think all these teams are built for what we watched for postseason itself. What's wild about the Diamondbacks, I'll get this off the screen, is that they're going to go up against their division rival. The team that won the division has to beat you again. Think about that. You spent all summer long to take out the Diamondbacks, and you did. Okay? But now you got to do it again in the postseason. Yes, the Diamondbacks had to win a couple of games to get to this point, but here we are. The D-Backs like, what division title? It didn't matter. And home field advantage doesn't matter when it comes to postseason. It used to. But now everybody plays each other so much. It's very, I can say, everybody's acquainted a little bit more about stadiums and travel. It's not as much as anymore. Where the old days where National League never saw the American League. So when they walked into that stadium, it was a different environment, different place. They all played in these stadiums. And these two teams know each other very well. I'm looking forward to this. I love when teams in the division face each other and they get all excited about winning the division and like, oh, crap, we got to do it again? Yeah, you got to do that. And just like Philadelphia and the Atlanta Braves, Atlanta, you got to do it again. You got to knock off the Phillies who have been chasing you all season long. And the Phillies are hot. Atlanta, you've been hot all year. But, man, what a great matchup that is, too. And then over the American League, we got Minnesota and Houston. Houston backdoors in, right, Jack? And I would say, basically, and because the way Texas played down the stretch.
Yeah, it looked like a three-team race for a little bit with the Mariners coming in, and then they just fell off a cliff as well.
They did. It was a fun 1 week of baseball that you thought it would go down to like the last day. And then you have, the Twins itself. It's been a very long time for Minnesota. I'm trying to think the last time Minnesota has won anything in that city. It's been, football-wise, some bad luck, some baseball bad luck, as you know.
Timberwolves certainly haven't been anywhere either.
Right. I think, Minnesota had a couple of playoff runs, but, never brought the title home. So they got a lot of hope there in Minnesota. They have a fun team to watch, and they're ready to go too. So overall, I didn't get to all teams, but this is a great matchup. Okay. For the Minnesota Twins against Houston itself. And then on the other side, the matchup, my mind's slipping right away, Texas and Baltimore. Very uncommon. Like, I don't even know what to think of it. I don't even know how Baltimore is going to respond to the playoff picture itself. But we'll have to wait it out a little bit. One more thing and then we'll get into more of these graphics, is the Astros. This is what we were talking about with Houston, folks. First team in Major League Baseball to finish the season below 500 at home. Yes, the barn in Houston, where it's probably, the easiest place to hit a home run is in Houston, folks. Yeah, they talk about Yankee Stadium and other stadiums that are like the old Camden Yards way. No, the barn in Houston, and they have a below 500 record at home. So Minnesota walking in there going, hey, I mean, who is Houston, right? But they have a 20-plus game win, 500, on the road, right? I guess. Oh, well, that's how they finished up itself. So they struggle on the road. But this is, Verlander came halfway through the season. I don't know how that much changed number-wise, if that affected the home and away kind of thing, because Verlander was tough down the stretch too, and it really helped them get through into the playoffs, because Houston was struggling for a while. And then they needed, and they got hurt. Bullpen got hurt too. Baltimore's bullpen is hurt. There's some injuries out there. Okay, so we got some of these teams are not fully loaded the way they were all season long, and they got hit with some injury bugs down the stretch also. All right, on the screen, Jack, this is for you. Okay, inherited runners. This is something that clutch hitting. And when we talk postseason, you better be able to come through the clutch. Look what the Diamondbacks did today against Milwaukee, game 1 and game 2. Clutch hitting, clutch home runs. I was a little worried about that, relying on the home run. But today, it wasn't the long ball. It was clutch hitting, and they took out the Brewers, who pretty good team. Had a good bullpen, right? Had a good pitching staff, right?
Great bullpen.
Right. Great bullpen. But the average, I'm going to give the average, and then you can roll with this because I want to know more about it, is baseball average is 0.32, right? So basically scoring runs with the runner on second, or is it runner on second, or is it runner on first? Is that what the stat is about, or this graphic about, or is it?
So the percentage of inherited runners that scored. So this is when a relief pitcher or closer comes into a game, and they have runners on base. So it's easy to, judge people by ERA, but when a relief pitcher comes in, their job usually is to come in when somebody might be doing bad and they inherit those runners. How can we stop the bleeding?
Right.
So what this statistic is, okay, let's say you have a runner on first, second, or third, and you come in relief, and this is essentially how many of those runners scored out of the volume that you get. Mm-hmm. So essentially what this graphic is, and I believe that the names of the teams are cut off a little bit, but so I kind of wanted to put together on what teams are good in these situations, and those would be the teams on the right. So on the far right team, the team that did it the best was the Toronto Blue Jays. So their bullpen only allowed 23% or 0.23 of the runners that their bullpen inherits to score. Mm-hmm. So they do a really good job of that. And then you have the Dodgers, who are on the good side of that as well, at 26%. And then, like you said, the league average is 32%. So they're above and beyond. It's two of the teams that did not do so well in this regard would be the Philadelphia Phillies and the Baltimore Orioles. So like you said, the Baltimore Orioles are already hurt in this in their bullpen. Losing a guy like Felix Bautista is critical. So they're going to need to go well above and beyond what their standard is, especially once these games start. They've had some rest, so maybe that can help them out a little bit, but they're going to need to take that next leap. And same with the Phillies, but their motto has been offense. and a little bit of starting pitching as well. So we know what their strategy is.
Yeah, these are good points too. Is bullpens get used a lot in postseason itself. In is matching up the best they can, right? That's really important. And clutch hitting, obviously. But the one thing that we noticed in the wild card series, all 4 of them, pitching dominated for the most part. I think the Milwaukee in Diamondback series had a little bit more competitive of scoring runs. Like I think tonight was it 5-2 or 5-3 final. And yesterday the D-backs were down 3-0 or something like that, and they stormed right back and took the lead and everything else. So there was a little bit more, but all the other series, great bullpen, really good starting pitching, and that's the key. And those are the things that you want to focus on. So for what Minnesota did to Toronto, which had some pretty good pop in their lineup, that's great, great stuff right there. And their bullpen, I mean, there's a guy, they're throwing 98, 101 in that bullpen in Minnesota. That's a heck of, it's awesome. I am concerned. I'm surprised to see the Dodgers at a good place, because if anything, that maybe held that team together. But I was surprised it was among them, one of the top teams that are in the postseason itself. I am a little startled by that. I was surprised that Toronto bullpen did not show up when they needed them. I mean, I would say it did show up to keep them in the game, but their starting pitching didn't. Obviously, they were down 3-0, like quick. They were down the whole time. They never had a lead. Never had a lead. Out of all the games so far, Jack, in the wild card part, I think it's just the Diamondbacks were the only team that fell behind twice, not even just once, and still won and came back and won. All the other ones,
such a good bullpen too. They did, like you had mentioned. That was the Brewers' motto all year, was their pitching. Their offense doesn't have the most pop. That's not what they set themselves out to be. Even though they do have some good players in that lineup, but their superstars outside of a few to be named are mostly on that pitching staff. But they just didn't show when it meant the most, especially late in those games.
All right, let's go to the next graph. Okay.
Yeah, and this jumps right into the starting pitching point as well. We've mentioned it a couple times, but I really wanted to kind of categorize these playoff teams by okay, are these teams did they get to the playoffs based off of their pitching? Do they do both well? Or did they scrape in based off, maybe they didn't have the greatest starting pitching, but they found a way, or their just offense was just above and beyond. So basically I wanted to line this up by, okay, what teams have a lot of quality starts? And a quality start is essentially when a starting pitcher comes into the game and they have a performance where they get to the 6th inning without allowing more than 3 runs. So great performances. And you can see on the right there, that's what that metric is. So the teams high up on this board, on the top half, were teams that performed well in that aspect, and the teams on the bottom half didn't do so well. And then basically I wanted to, divide it, like I said, by how many games they won. So the further you are on the right, that's, how good you did and win percentage wise. So that's why you see the Braves there, the Orioles there, Dodgers and Rays. But yeah, so essentially I feel like these teams in the top left had a lot of starting pitching going for them, as well as, they were able to provide enough offense to get them into the playoffs. The teams in the bottom left, the Diamondbacks and the Marlins, managed to get there based off of, their offense was able to get there, and, their bullpens didn't hurt them enough to take them out of games. And then Baltimore Orioles looks like they did both really, really well. So their starting pitching was really good and their offense was able to generate enough runs. And then the Braves, Dodgers, and Rays, as we've seen all year, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. They score a lot of runs. They don't need the pitching to do extremely well.
Yeah, I can see that too. Let me get this off the screen. Postseason is it is a different season, and there's more stress. Every pitch, there's more stress on the arm, energy wise. Who's able to get through those those times where stress guys on base. There's a lot of stress, especially now when guys are stealing left and right, right? And the game is different. So that's one thing we're going to watch is who's going to steal second, who's going to steal third. Is the pitcher able to hold them longer? Do they have a good release from the set position, not the full windup? Are they a slow windup or slow from the stretch itself? Which means, hey, stolen base is going to happen. The catcher itself, does he have a quick release? Is he one of the better ones at throwing guys out? Like when the games get tighter, these are the crunch time moments, right? I can tell that the Diamondbacks were a little bit more aggressive on the base paths, but that's kind of like their style. I helped them get through to this point. They got a little pop in their batting order, but other teams are going to try to create runs, right? Unless it's hard to look at Atlanta and think like they're just some power hitting because they got a lot of power and a lot of they're loaded, right? They're fully loaded. But it all changes when it gets back to starting pitching. If the pitching can dominate, right, or do its job and quiet down the bats, you'll see what happens in postseason. Guys can go into slumps. Some of the good hitters will go in slump. Good pitching can make you go into a slump. Okay. So we're going to find this out. It's going to be the same storylines over the last decades and decades of baseball postseason, but this is what it does. That's why it's one of the best postseasons or the best postseason because of the game within the game. Okay. What I'm looking forward to, Jack, before we go to the next one, is the pitch clock and the batter's calling timeout. These tools or these opportunities were used in past postseason playoff games and World Series for batters to step out and relax, take a deep breath, refocus. That's not allowed anymore, even for the pitcher itself. But the pitcher likes to move. Most pitchers like to move faster, get into rhythm. So it's okay with them. But it's the batters who got to focus. This is the first time we're going to experience this in postseason as things get tighter. I didn't quite see it a whole lot in the first round, in the wild card round, but I think it's going to come down to it, and we're going to have a moment or two where we're all going to be talking about the clock, the pitch clock, and all that good stuff too. All right, let me roll to the next one.
Yeah, and I think you perfectly segued me right into this graphic. So as you were saying, it's the game within the game. Who can we trust to, if they get a runner on, can they hold them there? And, that can be stolen bases. So that's catcher. Also, the same thing with the pass balls, but it also goes to the pitching as well. Are they giving up wild pitches? Are they giving up high fly balls that maybe allow, runners on second or third to get to third or score? So that's really a big part of the game because every run matters. So what we have here, and again, I wanted to highlight the teams that do this well and the teams that don't do this well. So I wanted to see, okay, over the course of the season, how many bases are teams giving up? So that, like I said, that can be a stolen base, that can be a wild pitch, that can be a pass ball, fly ball, anything that would, anything that's not a hit that would allow a player to get to the next base. So as we can see, the Dodgers, the Braves, and the Astros actually gave up a lot of these bases. Now, all three of these teams obviously generate enough offense and do well in other aspects to where they were able to win so many games. Those are three of the higher seeds of this entire playoffs. But you have teams like the Twins, the Rangers, and the Diamondbacks who did this really, really well, who especially compared to the league average. And those three teams managed to, it came down to the wire for some of those teams to, get actually outside of the Twins. Their division was not quite so good. But you have to imagine that this difference between league average to what the Twins, Rangers, and Diamondbacks did maybe allowed them to, sneak into that playoffs, especially a team like the Diamondbacks, who was in, that race between Marlins, themselves, the Reds, the Cubs. Maybe that made a big difference into them actually sliding into this playoffs. And I think this is a great attribute for a team to have going into these playoffs. Like you said, the game within the game.
Yeah, it's a great chart there, great graph there. Now, when I look at that again, the Dodgers are one of the worst ones in the playoffs, giving up a lot of bases. The Diamondbacks are one of the best. They're going head to head. Okay, that's pretty cool to see, and that's something that I'm looking forward to, because that could be a game changer in the series, where the Diamondbacks pitching allows a lot of runners on base. Okay, so they have a lot of action on the base pass when they're pitching. That's a lot of stress. It's a lot of stress on the arms, the pitching, everything going on. Where the Diamondbacks, for what you're saying here and what it shows, doesn't have a lot of stress. Not a lot of base runners. Look what happened. Milwaukee had a couple of moments, and that was it. It got real quiet. And you're probably right. You do got to hit the ball, and you're going to have to get clutch hitting. And this is so you can put all those base runners on against the Dodgers, but the Diamondbacks are going to have to get that big hit or two. Okay. Watch. We'll watch to see if the Dodgers continue to give up a lot of like walks, or the bullpen. That's the thing. The bullpen, even though you had a good number on it, every time I'm watching a Dodger game, there's action on the bases though, but they get out of it somehow. The point on this is, and I'll get off the screen on this, is some teams are built for the regular season and they can get through, but this is the kind of stuff that can bite you in the butt going postseason, because you're letting too many base runners on. And all you're doing is allowing a team to have a big hit. Somebody gets hot, another team, boom, it's over, right? And that's the case with the Dodgers and the Diamondback game. I'm excited for that series itself. And I'm going to go back to it one more time. Atlanta playing the Phillies. Atlanta, I know you can hit the ball and score some runs, man, but you better be ready too, because Philly is coming, and they're postseason season. This is not this is a veteran team in Philly. This is a team that has been there last year, and they're hungry, and they're able to put the ball in play. There's a lot of good things around there. You look at everything you said and graphed, nothing matters in the regular season. It's get over it. I don't even want to watch Fox and put up graphics that we're talking about so-and-so hit so-and-so, and, during this, I don't even give a crap. It starts now, and it started already, and I want to know who stays hot, right? And the teams that played in the wild card game, there are some hot teams rolling into round two in the divisional series. There are hot teams who are playing some good ball, and you don't want to be sitting there waiting around for these teams to come in like that. That's not a good picture. It's not a good picture. All right, here's one. It's not an Atlanta Brave graph, from what I can tell. But how are the teams scoring runs is something that, are they manufacturing it? Is it home runs, a lot of home runs? And, if you're hitting a lot of home runs, Jack, good pitching can stop that really quick from you scoring runs, because if you're not hitting home runs, then how are you manufacturing runs another way? And what do you got for this one? I'm sure you have a lot.
Yeah, no, I really kind of wanted to break this down into two parts, right? So like I said, how are teams generating these runs? I was curious because, with the rule changes and everything, are teams finding new ways to win? And one thing that I found really interesting was that, so 5 of the teams that made the playoffs, so nearly half, they hit below average home runs, like league average home runs, which I feel like that's not very common for the past couple of years that we've seen. So that includes the Orioles, which we have yet to see play, the Diamondbacks, who just moved on, and then you have the Marlins, Blue Jays, and Brewers, who unfortunately just exited out of the playoffs, but the Brewers did play the Diamondbacks. So those teams, I like to call them the chain movers. They get the people on base, and then they were able to drive them in. So that's how most of their offense was generated, and obviously the pitching helps on their side as well. But I found it really interesting to see that there were that many teams that didn't hit that many home runs that were able to sneak into the playoffs. The other category that I wanted to take a look at were those big bats. Do we still have those big home run hitting teams? And obviously, we still have those Atlanta Braves. We still have the Los Angeles Dodgers, which, like you said, that's going to be a really interesting matchup to see, because it seems like two very conflicting styles of baseball that are going to come up in that series. So that's a good one to watch. But those two teams alone, the Braves and the Dodgers, they've got two-headed monsters on both sides. You've got Matt Olson, you've got Acuna for the Braves, who both put up great regular seasons. But like you said, it doesn't matter until it matters, and it matters now. And then you've got Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts. And so those two guys on each side of those teams, those are going to be interesting hitters to watch. I feel like all four of those guys have the same possibility of going absolutely crazy, or, maybe being quieted a little bit.
But Jack, too, is if there's no base runners on, that home run is a solo shot. It's like, so good pitching can avoid a lot of damage. Like Jarrett Cole gave up home runs, but a lot of them were just solo shots. And it just, if it doesn't look good when you see it, but it's just one. It's not 3 runs, right? It's like when you inherit runners, like what you said. Good pitching will get you out of bad situations. And if the Dodgers are relying on the long ball more, which they have been over the last few years, and baseball has changed. So it's not ironic that teams that move runners over, play small ball, have a little pop in their batting order, are the ones doing well. Baltimore, Philly, it's got a lot of speed. Diamondbacks got a lot of speed, right? I'm a little leery on Minnesota, on small ball, but I'm sticking with the small ball teams because they know how to manufacture the run other than hoping for the big shot. Now, if the big boys show up and hit home runs, Jack, then it is what it is. But that has to continue every game, every series with good pitching. So, the old Baltimore
we
Oriole
saw that
way.
with
What's that?
Yeah, we saw that with the Phillies last year. They were super hot throughout that entire playoff series, but then they, an immovable object, that was what was sitting in front of them with that Houston Astros team, especially with, the pitching that they faced in that series. But yeah, anything, it doesn't matter until you face up against the team that you're facing up against. And the Phillies found that out after they were one of those teams that were praying for that long shot every single time. And it got them to a point where, anytime you get to a World Series, that's a great success. But you get there and you want to win it. And it just didn't end up being enough. But yeah, no, I wanted to highlight that because I think that's a perfect analogy for what you're saying.
Well, I'm not going to get to Ohtani yet, but this guy right here, he's not giving the finger. Okay. This is Philly way of talking and pumping up their dugout when they're on base. It's the ring finger. That's all they're thinking about, because a year ago they were that close and they're back again, and their goal is to win the ring. So it's not the middle finger, it's the ring finger. And so when you're watching the Phillies, and I've watched them tonight and yesterday, when you see them do this, they're not going F you to their whoever. it's the ring finger. That's their way of like pumping themselves up, and that's their symbolic way of doing things. I think it's cool. I think teams that have anything that makes it work. But when I first saw that, I'm like, what the hell? Who's he effing off? Like, who is he giving the bird to? And then I realized what it was, and so forth. All right. Couple of things here before we get you out of here. The Ohtani situation, hands up. He surrenders. He's out of. Looks like he's done in Anaheim or the Los Angeles Angels itself. I don't know what they're going to do. Dump so much money that persuades him to stay. I don't think this guy is about money. I think he's about winning. He wants to win championships. That's his makeup. And yes, some team's going to offer a lot of money, but who can provide the most and the best stage? Ohtani is looking for a stage. Los Angeles Angels, I don't know who gave him the advice to go there. It was never going to be the stage. That's not LA. That's Orange County. But now he gets his second shot, and he can sign anywhere he wants, Ohtani. And it's going to be a big market. They'll have the money for it, but he'll choose a team where they got a shot. People laying it all into the Dodgers because it's just because the Dodgers, and people want to say that. I don't believe. I think it comes down to two teams. San Francisco, they got money. They got sneaky money. They tried to get Aaron Judge a year ago, and now they get another shot for this guy. And they're not that far off. A guy like that can elevate them into the playoffs next year, say, right? And the other team is, I'm keeping an eye on this. I think San Fran is the lead team because West Coast, maybe he wants to be on the West Coast closer to Japan, I guess. I don't know. I'm just thinking that way. But I know he's infatuated with the East Coast. He's infatuated with the Yankees, the stage, the platform. He needs that. The Yankees are heavily pursuing the top pitcher in Japan right now. My connection is, which usually makes sense, is another Japan guy. Come on over, Ohtani. We're gonna and people. Where are the Yankees going to get the money? Watch what happens. They're not going to give a crap this year. The Yankees will not give it. They may try to trade away a chip. Maybe Stanton's gone if they can find a buyer or something like that. But this is not going well in New York. Not making the playoffs. They're going to spend. They're going to open. They've been kind of tight. But when you're trying to bring in a Japan pitcher and you say, Ohtani, come on, you got a buddy in the dugout, that makes more sense. And it's New York in the stage. And the Yankees are not that far off. They had a horrible midsummer into August without Judge, and they were 82 wins. That's not far off from a wild card anyway. You're only 5 or 6 games off probably. They ended up 22 and 23 and 9 or something like that. They were one of the hottest teams in the stretch. That was the team that was supposed to be all year long. Folks, it's San Francisco or the Yankees. The Mets are going to try because the Mets blew up everything. Mm-hmm. But if you're Ohtani, are you going to play in the Met Stadium or are you going to go play in Yankee Stadium? Right? Like if you had a choice to go to New York, if it's about the money, then you might as well go to Kansas City if they can afford you. Right? But people say, well, Ohtani doesn't want the big stage because he's Japanese. Screw that. The Japanese want the big stage. Ichiro wanted the big stage. Matsui wanted the big stage. They want the big stage. They come to play Major League Baseball for the big moments. They have to prove them. They want to show everything about it. Okay? So San Francisco is a big place. And it'll be a great fit. But I also think if you're going to go East Coast, I think the Yankees are going to talk to him. They are going to talk to him. Those are my top 2 teams. Your take now, real quick.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't aware that the Yankees were pursuing the top pitcher in Japan, but I mean, that's a pretty good chess move if they're looking to secure a guy like Shohei Ohtani, who's been in the States. And, it's been pretty well documented that, he spends the most time with his translator. So there might be a little bit of desire for him to have somebody like that. One team that, I was thinking about, and they're not a team that spends crazy amount of money, especially not right now, but big market and a team that looks kind of ready to start winning here soon was the Chicago Cubs. And that's a wild card because they have no ties, but something that maybe would make sense. But outside of those 2 teams, I like the San Francisco Giants to pull them in there too, especially like you said, after they tried to make a couple moves and pull a couple strings to get Aaron Judge last year. I remember the false report that was saying that he was heading there in the first place. And I was like, that's pretty crazy. But they're definitely a team that likes to dish out money too, especially to a suitable candidate.
Yeah, the Cubs are probably the 3rd team in line. If they keep Cody Bellinger, that's going to be a lot of money. But you add Ohtani with Bellinger, that's a nice power lefty side of the plate that teams are going to have to worry about. If Bellinger jumps ship and goes somewhere else, then Ohtani becomes more significant to the Cubs because they got to find that body, that power, that lefty. And obviously Ohtani is a better player than Bellinger, but Bellinger and former MVP, rookie guy, and finished really
great
strong.
Year.
Yeah, great year. So we're going to just say Yankees Giants or Cubs are the top 3 teams. I don't think it's the Dodgers. He's been in LA or he's been around that. Like, it's not. He needs something else. He needs something else. Chicago will be great. Can you imagine in Wrigley with that ballpark? Holy crap! What he can do there. Serious damage. I don't know about San Francisco with that. It's a big ballpark and it's hard to put one out unless you pull it down the line. It's got a lot of big dimensions, you know. And then you got Yankee Stadium where he can just lift it and it's gone in right field.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think he's going to look at all this stuff, right? The money will be there. I think he'll be more around probably the top paid player. I think maybe pushes 400 million. Okay. The injury and stuff affects him, but I think close to 400 million, which is not bad. He's still young and he's supposed to be pitching in about a year or so. So you'll get his arm back as a starter. I assume, you know, that's all going to come in and he'll be better a pitcher when he gets back. But all right, we're going to leave that there, Ohtani. But speaking of the Angels itself, this is the reason why he's not showing up, right? and maybe the reason why Mike Trout is going to ask for a trade. You know, Mike Trout has been part of this sub 500 season in Anaheim with the Angels, and 8th consecutive season. Everything they've spent, everything they try to do, it's just gone backwards. Even at the All-Star, at the trade deadline. So, if you have hope with the Angels, Ohtani, why? You know, if I was Ohtani, I would have fired whoever it is that made him sign with the Angels. It didn't go well. It did not go well. Rolling in here, big changes in New York with the Yankees. Aaron Judge says the Yankees need a higher level of urgency from the players. It's true, but they had a lot of minor leaguers and they were urgent to prove themselves, but there's a different level of championship urgency, you know, and a lot of these guys, when you're a young player, you're looking to earn a job and earn it for next season. And, you know, were they really heart and soul about championships, right? So the captain who's going to be meeting with the boss of the Yankees, Steinbrenner itself, and his quote is, just because you get to the big leagues and you get to New York, you still got to improve. You still got to make adjustments. And that's what I think these extra 4 weeks will help guys figure out, which means the offseason before, and get them on the right path itself. This is Aaron Judge after the last game over the last weekend of the season ending. Really not happy once changes in New York itself. And I know it's a lot. So the leader, the captain, I think, what did he have 40 home runs? He came close to it, right? It's pretty ridiculous when he misses like 2 months of baseball. And he, you know, he's like 10 home runs off the pace of you know, I think Ohtani had 50, or who had 50?
Ohtani had close. Like he.
No, the guy from what do you call it, from Atlanta, and Ohtani.
Olsen had 54.
Yeah.
And then I think Schwarber was coming up second with 47, hitting like 183, which is a miracle in itself.
Tremendous. So anyway, that's a big quick wrap on the Major League playoff picture itself. We got to give a lot of love to this guy right here. Number of active Major League Baseball players who faced the Montreal Expos. I thought there was one more out there, but I'm going to roll with this. Then maybe I saw where there was 2 left, but this came out. That's how far along this guy's been around. If you don't know who the Montreal Expos were, they are currently the Nationals, okay, of Washington. But Cabrera and Zach Greinke retiring, and Wainwright retiring, and maybe Joey Votto is retiring. There's 4 big time names. I think Greinke's Hall of Famer. I believe Cabrera's a Hall of Famer. Wainwright should be a Hall of Famer, right? Everything, even though his numbers, if Wainwright gets in, then Andy Pettitte gets in. Of the major, Andy has better numbers. So I'm curious to see. Even Joey Votto, great career and everything else, but his numbers are right there with other guys that still haven't gotten in. So it's like it all depends who wants these guys in, I guess. It's really, but they're all been great. Anybody would have loved one of these guys in their team, So, but if you're going to get one, and you better look at the other guys who've been waiting 10, 15 years, who have done great damage in Major League Baseball. And we'll see how it plays out. But they all retired, and they're all going to be on the clock in 5 years to be eligible to get to the Hall of Fame. And we'll see who gets in first out of this nice group of great baseball players who are leaving their mark in their city. Let's see. Cabrera played on 2 teams, but heavily in Detroit. Joey all day long in Cincinnati itself. Zach Greinke ends up back in Kansas City where he started, and he was great there also. And then Wainwright itself. Probably should have retired, but found the way to hang around, and great moment for him too over the weekend. A lot of good moments for baseball. It was a great. That's one thing about baseball and retirement. That last weekend, if there's great ones out there retiring, oh boy, you can't get that in other sports. You really don't. I just remember Walter Payton retiring and sat on the bench in Chicago Soldier Field, and it was over. And he sat there forever in the cold, cold Soldier Field, right? But that was, Ben Roethlisberger. We knew it was over, and he was, or whatever it was. Like, there are only certain times these great ones. Get J.J. Watt a year ago. Football has an opportunity for that stage for the last game of the year itself. But baseball, it really shines more when great ones hang it up, because you've been watching them for like 2 decades, most of these guys, right? And it's like you appreciate what they've done. So your thoughts on the retirement of these guys and from watching them. You grew up with these guys.
Yeah. No, especially being a Cincinnati homer, it was really like emotional for the city, to depart from Joey Votto. Obviously, the door's not entirely closed, but it's pretty much closed. So everybody over here in Cincinnati was, kind of reminiscing on Joey Votto's career. But like you said, it's pretty awesome that a lot of these guys had those moments. You saw Wainwright getting a chance to go hit for the Cardinals, a couple more times, which was pretty cool. Yadier Molina with the sign in the crowd. Miguel Cabrera. Yeah, that was a guy that I definitely grew up with back in his heyday. That was when I first started getting into baseball. So he was one of the first names that, that popped into my mind. And as I said, I'm a Cincinnati homer. So Adam Wainwright is definitely a household name here. So it's pretty cool to see. And I wish him nothing but the best in retirement.
Yeah, looking at everything right here. Let's see here. I'm going to put this on the screen real quick. I get the sponsors rolling through again. Is looking at the baseball matchups right now. I'm starting to put it in my head who I believe is going to get to the championship series. National League, I like the Phillies. I know Atlanta had a great year, but the Phillies are great momentum, hot baseball, playing at a high level, got a lot of great veteran experience, clutch hitting guys. Their pitching, has been good. They've got some good starting pitching. That's the only thing but matching up against Atlanta, I think it's okay. Great series, Atlanta and Philly. But I like Philly because of their hungrier. The ring, right? I'm trying to put the ring finger up. Can I do it? Right? I almost break my fingers in there. But I believe Philly is on that mission, and it's bust or championship or bust. I'm going with the Diamondbacks. And I got convinced on your graph and the graphics that we showed about runners on base and who allows and who's pitching allows a lot of runners on base. And between the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks allow the fewest between the two teams in a substantial number during the regular season. To me, that doesn't change in postseason unless some freakish hot. It's like that's something that I don't think shifts a whole lot. Okay, now the Diamondbacks can get cold because it's not like they got a good hitting team. They're most of their guys are close to the average or above average when hitting. Okay, overall, Their pitching has been good. Their bullpen was great in the Milwaukee series. I think this team is ready. And the one thing that Diamondbacks remember, and their fans, is the Dodgers jumping in their pool in a series. I don't know how many years ago. Maybe it was 2018 or something like that, when they lost to the Dodgers in a short series itself. That they don't want to see happen again with the Dodgers itself, and to beat your rival. But I like Philly and the Diamondbacks in the NLCS itself. And I kind of fell for Minnesota today. They didn't crumble like they have in the past. They always seem to have this mojo, and then it just crumbled. And there's something going on in there. And I believe in momentum in postseason, and it can go a long way, right? Can you finish it? Yeah. I'm going to roll with that. I believe Texas is still a good team in a lot of good ways, and they got a lot of good pitching. And Jordan Montgomery, if he can pitch like he did and get a couple of guys, that's a big game changer right there. And they're going up against Baltimore, whose bullpen was one of their biggest assets, takes a big blow. They're going to be fun to watch. I'm going with what I'm seeing, the hot teams. I'm going to go with Texas. They have more experience. All right. And I'm going to go with Minnesota because they have experience there. They have guys who've been there, some leaders in that dugout. Not what anybody expected. And I think Philly's the only one that you can say, okay, yeah, Philly. But this is a whole. Baltimore is going to be fun to watch, folks. But Texas they really had a good year, and Baltimore just maintained status throughout a very strange AL East. They're going to be tested for sure. So that's my 4. What are your 4 before we send you off?
Yeah, well, I love the takes on taking those wild card teams. They're riding hot right now. And I think I'm gonna go reverse order. With what you did, I like the Rangers there a lot. Baltimore is a very young team, and that's not to say that the Rangers have a ton of playoff experience, but they have the guys that are able to come in and beat a team like Baltimore. So I do like the Rangers there. I'm going to take the Astros over the Twins. I think, the Astros have been here nearly every year, and it seems like they get to the ALCS one way or another. But that Twins team is fun to watch, especially when they're putting balls in the air and balls in the stands, which they do at a high clip. But I will say you almost had me with the Astros having a below 500 record at home. I thought that was an interesting statistic, but I am going to go with the Astros there because I feel like when October comes, they're always right there. I do like the Diamondbacks. That when you look at the numbers there, when you look at them closely, that matchup favors the Diamondbacks in that series. Dodgers are another one of those teams that has that playoff experience, but the Diamondbacks play like they do. So we'll see what happens. That series against Milwaukee, I really thought the Brewers were going to come out and do some damage, especially with that pitching. But the Diamondbacks hung in there and won those games when they probably shouldn't have early on. So I like the Diamondbacks there. I think they'll ride that momentum. And for that Braves-Phillies series, it's going to be hard for me to, go against that Atlanta Braves team. I've seen them live up and close. They're the real deal. They're really good. And that's not to say that the Phillies don't have the personnel that are able to beat them. But, man, the Braves their offense just doesn't stop. I haven't seen them hit a slow mark throughout, the course of the season. And obviously that's regular season, so it doesn't matter. But they're a team with playoff experience as well. So I've got the Braves there. But that's going to be probably my series to watch this upcoming NLDS. So I'm really pumped for that.
The other thing I'm concerned for the Astros is they got some injuries in their pitching area, and that's why they went after and got Verlander. They needed some help. They needed some help itself. Don't forget, Max Scherzer's over there in Texas, right?
Yeah. They acquired him with that Mets sell-off.
Yeah. So, Texas has arms, experience, and they may not be able to go 5 or 6 innings, but they may be able to keep you in the game too through experience. I think Astros are going to be competitive because of what they are, but I believe the pitching that where it was a year ago, it's not at the same level unless somehow they can find a tick up in their abilities itself. So I'm a little. That's why I'm going to roll with the Twins itself. It's the hungry factor too. That's the other part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I love to see Correa if he has a wild series and sticks it to his old team. Things like that. A lot of narrative storylines that we can talk about with these next series coming up between all the teams itself. But we have a reset. So one more time before we let you go, it's Baltimore in the American League going up against Texas. Okay. Baltimore has the home field advantage, but no biggie. I don't believe in home field advantage in baseball as much, unless you're pitching pitches to your ballpark, and not too many teams do a good job of that. Twins and the Astros itself in the American League, okay? National League, Dodgers and Diamondbacks, and Braves and Phillies. That's your final grade 8. And then in a week from now or so, we should have maybe, my gosh, is it like that's not even a week anymore? It takes about freaking 10 days to get through. It depends on how it is. But we'll have our final 4, the ALCS and NLCS teams, and then October, which will go right into November.